The sun had barely risen over the horizon when the first whisper of dust appeared on the distant trail. Cole Dawson rode alone, his black horse kicking up clouds of sand and grit with each deliberate stride. He was a man who carried the weight of 1,000 dead eyes behind his own, a reputation forged from countless bounties collected and lives ended. Townsfolk whispered his name with fear, calling him the Hunter, a man who never missed and never forgave. Cole's latest assignment had taken him far from the familiar towns where his reputation preceded him like a shadow. He had been hired to capture Amelia Hayes, a young woman accused of a serious crime she did not commit. The contract was simple, or at least it seemed so to the men who paid him. Bring her in, dead or alive, and the reward would secure a comfortable life for months to come. That was all Cole needed to know. Rules, morality, and the truth had never been his concern, only the reward, the thrill, and the certainty of completing his task. As he approached the town of Red Willow, Cole could already sense its fear. The dusty main street was quiet, the buildings weathered and worn from sun and wind, their wooden planks creaking in the faint morning breeze. A few early risers peeked from windows and doorways, faces etched with worry and curiosity. Word of a bounty hunter arriving rarely came quietly, and in this case, it was a name that made the bravest man think twice before stepping outside. Cole's reputation had traveled faster than he had, carried by frightened whispers in taverns and saloons far and wide. Cole rode slowly down the main street, the horse's hooves echoing against the rough boards. His dark duster flapped against his legs, dust settling on its worn surface. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his eyes, revealing only a glint of steel and calculation. His hand rested casually on the grip of his revolver, the only gesture needed to make even the boldest townsfolk take a cautious step back. Women drew their children inside, and men averted their gaze, murmuring prayers under their breath. At the edge of the street, he spotted her. Amelia Hayes moved quietly, tending to her small garden behind a modest cabin that leaned against the backdrop of rolling hills. Sunlight caught her hair, a cascade of chestnut waves, and highlighted the determination in her gaze. She was the picture of simplicity, yet there was a fire in her eyes that seemed to say she would not easily be taken, even by a man like Cole. He watched for a moment, noting her alertness, the way she surveyed the surroundings with sharp intuition. This was no ordinary target. Cole's boots nudged the stirrups, urging the horse forward with a soft but deliberate pressure. There would be no mistakes here. He dismounted in the shadow of a nearby water trough, his movements silent and practiced. Every muscle, every instinct, was tuned to one purpose: to bring Amelia Hayes in and collect the reward. Yet as he drew closer, he felt something he had not felt in years, a flicker of curiosity, almost admiration. She moved with quiet confidence, every action precise and deliberate. Most women would have hidden, cowered, or fled. Not her. Amelia finally sensed movement and turned sharply, eyes widening at the figure stepping out from the shadows. For a heartbeat, she hesitated, recognizing the danger too late to escape entirely. Cole's reputation had reached her ears, and even though she had hoped the rumors were exaggerated, the reality was undeniable. This man was the hunter himself, the one who had never failed, and he had come for her. Amelia Hayes, Cole said, his voice low and controlled, each syllable deliberate. You've got a choice: come quietly, or I take you by force. His revolver gleamed in the morning sun as he tipped his hat slightly, a silent warning. Amelia's pulse quickened. She had spent her life being careful, staying unnoticed, and now everything was about to change. She straightened her back, meeting his gaze, and for a moment, there was silence to forces sizing each other up. The experienced hunter and the woman who had never been caught. Cole studied her carefully, noting not fear, but defiance. She was clever, quick, and more aware of her surroundings than most would be. This was not going to be an ordinary capture. He sensed it immediately. She would fight if cornered, and she might even outsmart him for a time. The thought intrigued him, though he did not admit it aloud. Without another word, Cole signaled with a subtle shift of his weight. His horse pawed the ground impatiently. The game had begun, and the hunter knew that the pursuit of Amelia Hayes would test him in ways he had not expected. What he did not yet know was that this hunt would also test his heart and, perhaps, in the end, change everything he thought he was capable of. The wind whispered through the tall grass surrounding Amelia Hayes' cabin, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and distant pine. Sunlight broke through the trees, illuminating the small plot of land where she worked tirelessly. Her hands, calloused from years of tending crops and mending fences, moved with practiced precision. Amelia had long ago learned that life in the remote outskirts of Red Willow demanded so. Every seed planted, every fence post hammered, was an act of quiet defiance against a world that often misunderstood her. Inside the cabin, Amelia moved with the same careful efficiency. She lit a small fire in the hearth, the smoke curling lazily upward, and prepared a simple breakfast of bread and eggs. Her eyes, deep and alert, scanned the room before she allowed herself a moment to breathe. The cabin was modest, just a single room with the loft, but it was hers, a sanctuary from the whispers and suspicions of the town. Despite her gentle demeanor, rumors had always clung to her like shadows. Some townsfolk called her a troublemaker, others whispered thief or witch. And though Amelia had never harmed anyone, she had grown accustomed to being feared for what she could do, rather than who she truly was. Amelia's quiet life wasn't just about survival, it was about community. Despite the suspicions, she helped anyone who asked, tending to sick children, mending broken tools, and offering what little knowledge she had of herbs and remedies. On this particular morning, she was gathering water from a nearby stream when she noticed a group of children sneaking along the edge of the field. Their laughter was tentative, as though they feared discovery, but they ran straight to her, faces bright with trust. "Good morning, Miss Amelia," one of them called. Amelia smiled, kneeling to meet their eager eyes. "Good morning, little ones. Did you bring the eggs I asked for?" They nodded, offering a small basket of farm eggs. She took it gratefully, ruffling their hair gently. For a moment, she allowed herself a rare feeling of peace, a connection to others, a reminder that not everyone saw her as an outcast, but that peace was fragile. The distant sound of hooves, faint at first, tugged at her instincts. Amelia froze, her sharp eyes scanning the horizon. Her intuition had never failed her. She knew that someone was coming, someone who carried danger like a second skin. She had heard rumors of bounty hunters, men who never hesitated, and the feeling in her gut told her that this was no ordinary visitor. As the hooves grew louder, dust rising in small clouds across the fields, Amelia grabbed a satchel and tucked a few essentials inside: water, dried meat, and a small knife her father had given her years ago. She moved quickly, efficiently, knowing every hiding spot in the woods that bordered her property. Every step was measured, her breaths shallow, but steady. Then, from the tree line, a figure emerged. A man on a black horse, hat pulled low over his eyes, and a long duster flapping behind him. Amelia recognized him immediately from the descriptions she had heard whispered in town. Cole Dawson, the hunter, a man whose name alone made the bravest citizens quake with fear. He had come for her. Amelia's heart pounded, but she didn't panic. She had learned long ago that fear was dangerous. It clouded judgment and slowed the mind. She led the horse's approach with careful steps, ducking behind trees and using the natural cover of the landscape. She had to make it to the hills beyond, where she knew the terrain better than any outsider. Cole's eyes scanned the field, sharp and calculating. He dismounted slowly, his boots crunching on the dirt as he approached the cabin. His gaze flickered to the children briefly, then to Amelia, who had moved with uncanny stealth. He smiled faintly, not with kindness but with the thrill of the hunt. "You're clever," he muttered under his breath, almost to himself. Clever, but not enough. Amelia held her breath, hiding behind a fallen log as Cole searched methodically. She remembered the lessons her father had taught her. Always anticipate your enemy, always know the terrain, and never let them corner you. She would not go quietly, and she would not fail. The morning sun climbed higher, shadows stretching long across the cabin yard. Amelia adjusted the satchel on her back and prepared to vanish into the wilderness she knew so intimately. Today, she would survive. Today, she would outsmart the man who would come as her enemy. And though she didn't yet realize it, this chase would not only test her skills and courage, but would also begin to change the man pursuing her in ways neither of them could predict. The afternoon sun burned overhead as Amelia Hayes moved carefully along the narrow path through the hills, keeping low behind rocks and sparse brush. Her pulse was steady, though adrenaline surged in her veins. She could hear the distant thrum of hooves, soft at first, then growing louder. Cole Dawson was near, no doubt following her trail with the precision that had earned him the title of the hunter. Amelia had anticipated his movements. Every trap, every maneuver he might attempt, she had considered. Yet she knew instinctively that this would be their first true encounter, and that her skills alone might not be enough. She adjusted the satchel on her back, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and scanned the rocky outcrop ahead. This spot could be her advantage or her trap. Cole emerged from the trees with quiet, deliberate steps, dismounting from his black horse with practiced ease. His eyes, shaded beneath the wide brim of his hat, locked onto Amelia immediately. There was no hesitation, no surprise, only the calculated focus of a man who had never failed at his job. "Amelia Hayes," he called, his voice carrying clearly across the hills. "There's no reason to run. Come quietly, and I promise it won't hurt too much." Amelia froze, weighing her options. She could attempt to sprint through the rough terrain, but she knew Cole would catch her before she reached the next ridge. She could fight, but he was a trained killer, quick and deadly. Instead, she chose a third option: deception. She stepped slightly into view, hands raised in a gesture of submission. "I don't want trouble," she said calmly, though her heart pounded. "I've done nothing to anyone." Cole's gaze didn't soften. If anything, he tilted his head slightly, almost curiously. "Nothing to anyone?" he asked. "Tell that to the man who put a bounty on your head." Amelia's jaw tightened. She had anticipated his cynicism, his single-minded focus on completing his contract. "I'm innocent," she said, "and I can prove it." Cole's smirk was almost imperceptible. "Innocence doesn't pay my debts," he muttered, stepping closer, hand hovering near his revolver. "But cleverness might make this interesting." Before she could respond, he lunged forward, moving faster than she expected. Amelia reacted instinctively, diving behind a large boulder. The ground trembled slightly as Cole's horse pawed the dirt in impatience. He circled cautiously, scanning the area, anticipating her next move. Amelia's mind raced. She knew she couldn't stay in one place. Every second wasted gave Cole an advantage. She spotted a narrow crevice, leading further into the hills, a place she had used as a hiding spot during past emergencies. But to reach it, she would have to make a dangerous dash across open ground. Cole, ever the predator, seemed to anticipate her thoughts. He called out, his voice calm but commanding, "You can't hide forever. I know these hills almost as well as you do." Amelia took a deep breath and bolted. Dust flew up in clouds behind her as she sprinted toward the crevice. Cole's eyes narrowed, and in one fluid motion, he drew his revolver, firing a warning shot that splintered a nearby rock. The sharp crack echoed through the hills, but Amelia kept running, adrenaline fueling her speed. She barely made it to the crevice, squeezing through the narrow opening as Cole's horse skidded to a halt nearby. He dismounted, observing her retreat with silent admiration. Most people would have panicked, cried, or faltered under pressure. Not Amelia. She moved with precision, with calm determination, and that was unusual. Cole stepped closer to the edge of the crevice, peering down at her. He lowered his revolver, slightly, not out of mercy, but respect. "Not bad," he muttered, "not bad at all." Amelia, catching her breath, kept her eyes on him. Every instinct screamed that he was dangerous, yet in that moment, she sensed something unexpected, a flicker of something human beneath the hunter's cold exterior. For a brief instant, she wondered if perhaps he wasn't just a killer for hire, but a man capable of something more. Cole didn't move to capture her that day. Instead, he mounted his horse and rode slowly back to town, leaving her hidden among the rocks. Amelia watched him go, relief flooding through her, but she knew the game had only just begun. This was the first real test, and both of them had learned something crucial. Amelia was no ordinary target, and Cole Dawson was no ordinary hunter. As the sun dipped lower behind the hills, Amelia crept further into the shadows, preparing herself for the next encounter. She would survive, she promised herself, and if the hunter returned she knew she would be ready. The hills outside Red Willow stretched endlessly, jagged rocks and sparse vegetation making the terrain both treacherous and familiar. Amelia Hayes moved quickly, her boots crunching against dry stones, her breath steady despite the pounding of her heart. She knew these hills better than anyone, every crevice, every ridge, every hidden path. It was her advantage, and she intended to use it. Behind her, faint but unmistakable, the sound of hooves echoed through the canyons. Cole Dawson pursued, with relentless precision, his black horse moving like a shadow, silent but deadly. The bounty hunter had a reputation for never failing, and he intended to uphold it. Yet, as he watched Amelia navigate the rocky paths with such skill, a flicker of something unfamiliar stirred within him curiosity. Amelia ducked behind a large boulder, pausing to catch her breath. Her sharp eyes scanned the terrain below, where the narrow ravine split into two paths. One path led to the edge of a steep cliff, the other wound down toward a thicket of dense trees. Choosing carefully, she darted toward the trees, using her agility and knowledge of the land to stay one step ahead. Cole slowed for a moment at the boulder. Observing her movements, he didn't speak. He didn't rush. Every step was calculated. He knew she was clever, possibly more clever than many of the targets he had pursued. Most people, when cornered, panicked. Amelia moved with purpose, measuring each footfall, anticipating the environment around her. That intrigued him. It was a game and he was a hunter who thrived on games. As Amelia sprinted into the thicket, branches scratched her arms and face, yet she kept going, her focus unbroken. She had survived storms, wild animals, and townsfolk who feared her, but she had never faced a hunter like Cole. His presence brought a tension unlike anything she had experienced. Every sound of his approach forced her mind to sharpen, to strategize, to adapt. Cole followed at a distance, careful not to push too close too soon. He had learned over the years that patience often yielded better results than brute force. He could see her defiance, her determination, and unsettlingly, her humanity. Most targets he hunted were merely names on a contract. Amelia Hayes was something else entirely. The terrain changed as they descended into a narrow canyon. The walls rose high on either side, casting long shadows as the sun began its slow descent. Amelia paused briefly, listening for the slightest indication of Cole's position. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of leather and horse sweat. He was near, closer than she had hoped. Her pulse quickened, but she forced herself to remain calm. Panic was a luxury she could not afford. Cole's eyes narrowed. He moved with careful steps, making no unnecessary noise. The thrill of the chase coursed through him, yet he felt an unfamiliar tension. He was studying her, not just pursuing. Every decision she made, every path she took, revealed her intelligence and courage. Most people would crumble under pressure. Amelia adapted. Amelia survived. That impressed him, though he refused to admit it aloud. As the canyon widened, Amelia spotted a shallow stream running along the edge. She paused, considering her options. The water could slow her down, but it could also mask her scent and give her a brief advantage. Choosing quickly, she splashed through the stream, sending droplets sparkling in the afternoon sun. Cole slowed, watching, noting the risk she had taken. Clever, but risky. Hours passed as they maneuvered through the hills, neither willing to make a fatal mistake. Amelia led him over rocky ridges, through hidden gullies, and into areas only she could navigate. Cole followed, relentless but increasingly thoughtful. The pursuit was no longer just about the bounty. It had become a test of skill, strategy, and endurance. Finally, as twilight approached, Amelia found a narrow cave entrance hidden by thick brush. She slipped inside, pressing herself against the cool stone walls. Her chest heaved with exertion, but her mind remained sharp. Cole approached the cave cautiously, peering inside but respecting the shadows and distance. He didn't rush. He never rushed. Amelia's eyes met his from the darkness of the cave. For a fleeting moment, their gazes locked, a silent understanding passing between them. She would not give up easily, and he would not underestimate her. The chase had only just begun, and already, both hunter and hunted had learned something essential about each other. The night settled over the hills, stars beginning to pierce the deepening sky. Amelia whispered a quiet vow to herself. She would survive, no matter the cost. And somewhere, out there in the darkness, Cole Dawson was beginning to realize that this hunt would challenge more than just his skills. It might challenge his very nature. The sun had dipped low, painting the hills in shades of gold and crimson. Amelia Hayes crept along a narrow ridge, her eyes scanning the terrain carefully. She had thought she was safe for the moment, having outmaneuvered Cole Dawson for hours. Through the rugged hills, yet danger had a way of finding her, even when she believed she was unseen. From the far side of the ridge, voices rose in harsh tones, rough, threatening, and unmistakably hostile. A gang of outlaws, faces masked and guns drawn, emerged from the shadows. They had been tracking her independently, eager to claim the bounty placed on her head. Unlike Cole, these men had no code, no patience, no honor. They sought only blood and gold. Amelia froze for a brief moment, heart pounding. There was no way she could fight them off alone. Before she could make a move, a figure appeared from behind a raucous shadow that moved faster than the outlaws anticipated. Cole Dawson stepped into the open, revolver drawn, his calm demeanor in stark contrast to the chaos surrounding him. "Step back," he commanded, his voice carrying authority, each word deliberate, "or you won't live to regret it." The outlaws hesitated, sizing him up. They had heard stories of Cole Dawson, the hunter, the man who never missed. Yet they were desperate and ruthless, willing to take risks. One of them sneered and fired a shot, the bullet whistling dangerously close to Cole's head. He dove into action with practiced precision, returning fire, forcing the gang to scatter behind rocks and brush. His movements were swift and controlled, each shot carefully placed, to disable, not kill. Amelia watched, wide-eyed. Cole had saved her not because he owed her, not because he was hired to, but because his instinct for the hunt had recognized a greater threat. In that moment, the lines between hunter and hunted blurred. Cole wasn't just a mercenary chasing a contract. He was a man protecting someone who had proven herself clever enough to evade him repeatedly. "Follow me," Cole called to Amelia after neutralizing the immediate threat. "There's a safe path through the canyon. Move fast." Without hesitation, Amelia ran to him, her trust fragile but necessary. Together, they navigated the twisting paths, using shadows and terrain to their advantage. Cole covered her relentlessly, eyes scanning every ridge and hollow for movement. Each step revealed a glimpse of the man behind the reputation, a man capable of action for reasons beyond money. As they paused briefly near a hidden grove, Amelia allowed herself a moment to breathe. She studied Cole cautiously. "Why did you help me?" she asked, her voice low, cautious. Cole didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the ridge above, alert for any further threats. Finally, he spoke, his tone measured. "Because it wasn't worth losing you to them. The bounty is one thing. These men, they'd kill indiscriminately. I don't like indiscriminate death." Amelia processed his words, surprised. She had expected threats, demands, or silence. Instead, she heard something unexpected. Judgment, yes, but guided by a strange sense of morality. It didn't make him kind, and it didn't make him her friend, but it made him an ally for now. The uneasy truce between them was sealed as night fell. They camped briefly in the grove, fires low, smoke curling into the dark sky. Amelia tended to minor scratches, and bruises, grateful for Cole's quiet presence. He remained watchful, his revolver never far from his hand, eyes scanning the darkness for signs of pursuit. "Tomorrow, we move at first light," Cole said quietly, breaking the silence. "We need to put distance between us and that gang. Then we can talk about what comes next." Amelia nodded, understanding implicitly. This alliance was fragile, born out of necessity rather than trust, yet it was enough to keep her alive. As she drifted into a light sleep, she realized something. The man who had arrived as her enemy had saved her life, and in doing so, changed the rules of their deadly game. For Cole, the night was quiet but restless. He knew this alliance was temporary, a matter of survival, yet the thought of Amelia Hayes lingered in his mind. She was clever, resourceful, and fearless, qualities that demanded respect. More than that, she was alive, and under his watch, she would remain so. That as the first light of dawn began to creep over the hills, both hunter and hunted were already preparing for the next chapter. Trust was still a foreign concept between them, but necessity had forged a bond that neither could ignore. The chase was far from over, but for the first time, Amelia Hayes had someone watching her back, someone who had arrived as her enemy, and stayed, however reluctantly, to protect her. The morning sun rose slowly over the hills, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. Amelia Hayes stirred first, rubbing her tired eyes as she glanced at Cole Dawson. He sat a few paces away, sharpening the edge of his revolver with meticulous care. His expression was unreadable, as always, but there was a tension in his posture, a subtle sign that this mission was testing more than his skill. They moved in silence through the winding canyons, keeping their path hidden from the gang of outlaws they had narrowly escaped. Amelia led the way, her steps precise, her knowledge of the land unmatched. Cole followed closely, alert to every sound, but he began noticing more than just threats. He watched her move, listened to the soft swish of her clothing against the brush, the way she calculated every step. There was intelligence here, yes, but also courage, and a resilience he rarely encountered. Hours passed. They stopped briefly near a spring, the cool water gurgling over smooth stones. Amelia drank quickly, then offered some to Cole. He accepted, wordlessly noting the gesture. Most people would have panicked, begged, or faltered under pressure. Amelia Hayes drank calmly, repaired her satchel, and checked her surroundings, alert to any danger. It was in these small actions, the quiet confidence, that Cole began to see her not as prey, but as someone who commanded respect. "Why do you keep helping me?" Amelia finally asked, breaking the silence. They had walked for miles, the canyon walls shielding them from prying eyes. Her voice was cautious, yet curious. Cole didn't answer at first. His eyes were scanning the terrain ahead, watching for movement, calculating escape routes, noting the position of the rising sun. Finally, he spoke, his tone low and measured. "Because if I don't, you'll die, and I'm not in the habit of letting people die when it could have been avoided." Amelia raised an eyebrow, uncertain how to interpret his words. It wasn't kindness, not exactly. It was pragmatism with a faint, almost imperceptible hint of principle. For someone like Cole Dawson, who had never cared for morality beyond the reward, this was unusual. The day wore on, and they continued their trek through the hills. Amelia pointed out hidden paths, small caves for shelter, and spots where the terrain could be used to ambush pursuers. Cole followed, silently impressed. She was not just surviving, she was thriving in a world designed to push her down. That strength, that intelligence, stirred something he hadn't felt in years. A sense of admiration, not for reward or fame, but for her very being. At midday, a hawk circled overhead, its shadow briefly passing over them. Amelia paused, pointing out the direction of the gang's last known position. Cole listened, appreciating her keen awareness. Most targets would have panicked, made mistakes, but she read the world with precision. Her life was in her own hands, and for the first time he began to question the mission that had brought him here. As evening approached, they found a small plateau overlooking the valley below. They rested, sharing the meager supplies Amelia had carried. Cole kept his revolver within reach, eyes scanning the horizon, yet he began to allow small moments of conversation. They talked cautiously, exchanging observations, occasionally laughing at dry humor that emerged despite the danger. For Cole, it was unexpected. He hadn't realized he could feel connection during a pursuit. In the growing shadows, Cole's thoughts wandered. The bounty on Amelia's head had been lucrative, but did it matter anymore? He had come to capture a target, yet she had revealed a side of life he had long ignored. Courage, humanity, cleverness that demanded respect. Perhaps his reputation as a hunter was meaningless in the face of witnessing someone like her. Night fell, and they made camp beneath a large oak. Amelia tended to minor injuries, while Cole prepared a small fire, his movements precise and efficient. They shared the warmth in silence for a while, the only sounds, the crackle of flames, and the distant howl of coyotes. Cole found himself observing her, noting the determination in her eyes even in exhaustion. He realized that she had changed, something in him not just challenging his skills, but stirring a sense of duty. protection, and respect. Cole's hand lingered near his revolver, but the tension in his shoulders had eased. He was beginning to see Amelia not as a contract, not as prey, but as someone whose survival mattered more than money. This respect was unfamiliar, unsettling even, yet it was undeniable. As they drifted into a light sleep, Cole reflected on the day's events. The bond between hunter and hunted had shifted subtly but irrevocably. Amelia Hayes was no ordinary target, and he was no ordinary pursuer. The next steps of their journey would test both of them in ways they could not yet foresee, but, for the first time, Cole Dawson found himself willing to question what he had always taken for granted. The morning mist clung to the hills like a thin veil, shrouding the terrain in a ghostly silver. Cole Dawson and Amelia Hayes moved cautiously through a narrow valley, the weight of the previous day's pursuit heavy in their minds. The tension between them had shifted subtly. Where once there had been distrust and calculation, now there was a fragile respect, though neither dared to speak of it aloud. Each knew the other's skills. Each recognized the other's will to survive. Cole had spent the night in thought, reflecting on what he had learned about Amelia. She was clever, resourceful, and brave. Yes, but more than that. She had a sense of morality he had long ignored. His life as a bounty hunter had been governed by contracts and money, by efficiency and intimidation. Now, facing the reality of the young woman who had evaded him repeatedly, he felt the dissonance he could not ignore. She was innocent of the crime she had been accused of, yet she was being hunted as if she were guilty. As they crested a hill, Cole spotted signs of movement below a campfire smoldering, figures moving cautiously around it. He motioned for Amelia to crouch behind a large boulder. "Stay low," he whispered. "We've got company and it's not friendly." Amelia peered through the brush, her heart tightening. She recognized the men. Hired guns, sent not by chance, but by the very landowner who had set the bounty on her head. They were well armed, experienced, and determined to see her captured or dead. Cole's gaze hardened as he surveyed them. Every instinct he possessed screamed that this encounter would be deadly, yet something had shifted within him. The goal was no longer just to capture or kill. He would protect her, even if it meant risking his own life. He turned to Amelia. "Listen carefully. I don't know how long we'll have, but we can't let them take you. Follow my lead, and don't hesitate. Do exactly what I say." Amelia nodded, her trust tempered by survival instincts. She had already seen glimpses of the man Cole was beneath the hardened bounty hunter exterior protector. A strategist, someone who would not let her die without reason. Still, the stakes were high, and one wrong move could be fatal. As the hired guns approached the edge of the clearing, Cole moved with precision, using the terrain to his advantage. He guided Amelia through hidden gullies and dense brush, ensuring they remained unseen. Every step was calculated, every motion deliberate. Yet in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the thought that this pursuit was personal now. It wasn't just a job, it was a matter of principle, and perhaps something more he couldn't yet name. Finally, they reached a small plateau overlooking the enemy's camp. Cole crouched beside Amelia, whispering instructions. "We can't outgun them there. Too many, but we can outsmart them. Wait for my signal, then move fast. No hesitation." Amelia's hands clenched instinctively, the weight of trust heavy on her shoulders. She had relied on her cunning and agility for survival before, but now she relied on Cole's skill and judgment. It was a strange, uneasy alliance that neither had sought, yet both depended upon. The sun rose higher, glinting off rifles as the hired guns scouted the area. Cole's finger hovered near the trigger of his revolver, his eyes scanning the landscape with unerring focus. He had hunted many, defeated many, yet he had never been invested in protecting a target so deeply. Amelia's safety had become more important than the bounty or his reputation. It was a revelation that unsettled him, yet he embraced it. The turning point came abruptly. A scout from the hired gang spotted Amelia's satchel lying in the brush. He shouted in alarm, and chaos erupted. Cole acted instantly, firing precise shots to disable their advantage, while guiding Amelia through a hidden path leading away from the camp. She moved with speed and precision, relying on his guidance and her own instincts. As they gained distance, Cole realized something fundamental. He had been sent to hunt a supposed criminal, yet he had become her guardian. The bounty no longer mattered. The truth of her innocence, the injustice of the situation, and the danger she faced had shifted his priorities completely. He would not deliver her to her pursuers. He would protect her at any cost. Amelia glanced at him during a brief pause, noting the intensity in his eyes. For the first time, she saw beyond the mask of the feared bounty hunter of the man beneath, capable of loyalty, courage, and sacrifice. The hunter had become her shield, her unexpected ally. Cole Dawson tightened his grip on his revolver, scanning the horizon for threats. "We're not safe yet," he said quietly, his voice carrying both warning and reassurance. "But from now on, I'm not hunting you, I'm protecting you, understand?" Amelia nodded, a mixture of relief and cautious trust in her eyes. The turning point had been reached. the man who arrived as her enemy had chosen a new path. From this moment forward, the chase was no longer about capture or contract, it was about survival, justice, and the bond forged in the crucible of danger. And somewhere deep inside, Cole realized that protecting her might mean sacrificing everything he had once valued. The tension had reached its peak. Amelia Hayes and Cole Dawson had survived the treacherous hills, evaded outlaws, and overcome relentless pursuit. But the true source of danger remained, the corrupt landowner who had orchestrated the bounty on Amelia's head. This man, powerful and ruthless, had long controlled Red Willow's outskirts with intimidation and manipulation. Now, Amelia and Cole approached his estate. Knowing the confrontation was inevitable, the estate loomed ahead, perched atop a small rise, fortified and patrolled with armed guards. Its imposing fences and the heavy wooden doors signaled both wealth and authority. But Amelia and Cole knew that the facade of power could be exploited. They approached cautiously, assessing the guards' positions, the timing of patrols, and the estate's layout. Every detail mattered because this was no ordinary adversary. The landowner had resources, influence, and a sense of invincibility that made him dangerous. Cole, who had once been a hunter for money and contracts, now moved with a different purpose. His mission had shifted from capturing or killing Amelia to protecting her at all costs. He analyzed every approach and cover, signaling silently to Amelia as they navigated the terrain. Her knowledge of the landscape, combined with his lethal skills and tactical mind, created a formidable team. This was no longer a chase, it was a strategic assault, carefully planned to avoid unnecessary bloodshed while ensuring the landowner's defeat. The first obstacle was the guards patrolling the perimeter. Cole moved with precision, taking shots that disabled sentries without alerting the entire estate. Amelia used the confusion to her advantage, slipping through shadows and narrow corridors. Together, they approached the main hall where the landowner sat, confident in his control. The contrast between the hunter's skill and the landowner's arrogance became immediately apparent. Cole and Amelia were shadows in the chaos, silent, efficient, and deadly. When they finally confronted the landowner, his initial reaction was disbelief and anger. He had underestimated both Amelia and Cole, assuming that a simple bounty and a few hired guns would suffice to eliminate her. But here, faced with a pair who had already outsmarted him and survived multiple threats, his power began to crumble. Cole's unwavering gaze and steady hand with the revolver left no room for defiance. Amelia, calm and determined, confronted the landowner with words that carried the weight of every injustice he had inflicted. Her courage and resolve matched Cole's precision and experience, making them a force that the landowner could neither intimidate nor outmaneuver. Chaos erupted as remaining guards attempted to intervene. Cole's sharpshooting and tactical movement kept them at bay, while Amelia's agility and quick thinking allowed her to neutralize those who posed immediate threats. Every action reinforced their partnership, hunter and hunted, now working in tandem, each complementing the other's strengths. In minutes, the confrontation decisively shifted in their favor. Finally, the landowner tried to flee, only to be intercepted by Cole. For the first time, Amelia saw the full extent of Cole's commitment. He wasn't protecting her out of obligation or profit, but out of a newfound sense of justice. Together, they had dismantled the landowner's reign, turning his estate from a symbol of power into a monument of his failure. The confrontation marked a turning point. It demonstrated the evolution of their relationship from distrust and survival instinct to mutual respect, cooperation, and even an unspoken bond. Cole had transformed from a hunter focused on money to a protector, willing to risk everything to ensure Amelia's safety. Amelia, in turn, saw the man behind the reputation of formidable, principled figure capable of loyalty and sacrifice. By sunset, the estate lay in disarray, and the threat it represented had been neutralized. Though danger still existed beyond its walls, Amelia and Cole emerged stronger, bonded by shared struggle and triumph. The confrontation proved that skill, courage, and loyalty could overcome power and corruption, and it set the stage for the final chapters of their survival. Trust and sacrifice would define their future. The confrontation with the landowner had left a profound impact on both Amelia Hayes and Cole Dawson. The estate, once a symbol of the man's authority and cruelty, now stood in disarray, silent except for the echoes of footsteps and the occasional rustle of disturbed papers. For Amelia, the moment was both a relief and a revelation. She had survived relentless pursuit, outsmarted, hired guns, and faced down a man whose influence had threatened her entire life. But beyond survival, she had witnessed something unexpected, the transformation of the man who had entered her life as a feared hunter. Cole Dawson, whose reputation had been built on contracts, intimidation, and cold precision, had evolved from a relentless pursuer into her steadfast protector. Watching Amelia navigate the aftermath of the chaos, he felt a sense of responsibility he had never experienced before. Her courage, intelligence, and adaptability impressed him, and he could no longer view her merely as a target or a job to be completed. She was someone worth safeguarding, someone whose survival now carried meaning beyond any bounty. The journey back through the hills to safety was quiet but filled with unspoken communication. They moved with synchronized precision, avoiding potential threats and making use of their shared knowledge of the terrain. Every glance, every small gesture, spoke volumes about the trust that had begun to form between them. It was tentative and cautious, built on necessity, yet it was undeniable. Both had faced danger together, and in the crucible of that experience, a bond had formed, one grounded in mutual respect, reliance, and emerging admiration. As they paused near a safe vantage point overlooking the valley, Amelia finally voiced the question that had been on her mind since their escape. "Why did you stay with me? After all the chaos, the bounty, you could have taken it and left." Cole's answer was measured, revealing a layer of emotion rarely glimpsed beneath his stoic exterior. "It wasn't just about the bounty anymore," he said, his eyes scanning the horizon. "You're not just a target. You're smart, capable, and brave. And I realized letting you face those threats alone would be wrong. I couldn't let that happen." Amelia studied him carefully. She had anticipated self-interest, perhaps even indifference, but not this recognition of her humanity, her courage, and her right to survive. The words lingered between them, fragile but powerful, signaling a shift in their relationship from adversaries to allies. That night, as they set up a temporary camp, the firelight illuminated a new dynamic. Amelia tended to minor scrapes and bruises, while Cole maintained watch with the same vigilance that had characterized his life as a hunter. Yet now, his watchfulness was protective rather than predatory. They spoke cautiously, sharing observations, small jokes, and even moments of reflection. Through the conversation, a deeper understanding emerged. Both had faced peril, but together they were stronger. Their partnership was no longer dictated by pursuit or survival. Alone it had grown into mutual reliance, shaped by the experiences they had endured together. The bond between them continued to stretch and strengthen as they planned for the next phase of their journey. Amelia's quick thinking and familiarity with the terrain complemented Cole's combat skills and strategic mind. Every obstacle they faced, from unpredictable terrain to potential pursuers, reinforced the trust and respect between them. It became clear that neither could function as effectively alone as they could together. For Cole, the transformation was particularly striking. He had spent years as a lone hunter, detached from emotional attachments and moral dilemmas. Amelia challenged that detachment, awakening a protective instinct and an emotional awareness that he had long suppressed. He realized that his priorities had shifted. Her survival mattered more than any contract, more than his reputation, more than the money he had once pursued without question. Amelia, in turn, acknowledged the complexity of the man she had once feared. Cole was formidable, disciplined, and lethal, but he was also capable of loyalty, courage, and empathy. The events of the past days had revealed a man who could evolve, who could act selflessly when the stakes were right. It was a revelation that left her both cautious and hopeful, understanding that this growing bond was both rare and fragile. By the time dawn approached, they were ready to move again. The night had solidified not only their survival but the emotional connection that had developed through shared danger and mutual respect. They were no longer simply hunter and hunted. They had become partners, bound by circumstance, trust, and the unspoken acknowledgement that what they shared had changed both of their lives forever. The aftermath of the landowner's defeat marked a turning point in their journey. The immediate threat had passed, but the world remained unpredictable. Yet, together, Amelia and Cole faced the future with a new sense of strength. Their bond, forged in fire and danger, was a testament to the power of trust, courage, and the unexpected alliances that arise when lives intersect under extraordinary circumstances. The final stretch of their journey brought them to a narrow, precarious canyon bridge, a perfect choke point where their pursuers would have no choice but to confront them. Cole Dawson and Amelia Hayes had evaded countless dangers before, but this was different. Word of Amelia's survival had spread, and hired guns were closing in, determined to claim the bounty or silence her for good. Cole knew that this confrontation could demand everything from him. They approached under the dim light of dawn. Cole's eyes swept the bridge and the surrounding cliffs, calculating every angle, every risk. Amelia moved closely behind him, her trust in him absolute but tinged with fear. She had seen his precision, his skill, and his willingness to act decisively. Yet nothing could have prepared her for what was about to happen. "Stay close," Cole whispered. "Once we step onto that bridge, they'll be waiting. I'll handle the first wave. Follow my lead, and don't hesitate." Amelia nodded, gripping her satchel tightly. There was a shared understanding in that silence. Survival now depended not just on skill, but on trust and timing. The first shots rang out almost immediately, bullets pinging against the bridge's supports. Cole moved with lethal precision, using the narrow structure to control the fight, while Amelia followed his lead, disabling assailants where she could. The fight was chaotic and brutal. Hired guns appeared from hidden alcoves, forcing Cole and Amelia to keep moving, covering each other's flanks. Every maneuver required split-second decisions, blending Cole's combat expertise with Amelia's agility and quick thinking. Together, they were a force no one had anticipated. Then, a gunman emerged directly in Amelia's path, aiming to end her life. Without hesitation, Cole threw himself in front of her, taking the bullet meant for her. The world seemed to slow as Amelia screamed, dropping to her knees beside him. Cole's blood stained the bridge, yet he lifted his revolver one last time, neutralizing the immediate threat before collapsing. Amelia held him, shock and grief coursing through her. Cole's breathing was shallow, but his eyes met hers, softened, in a way that revealed the man beneath the feared bounty hunter exterior. "It's okay," he whispered, "you survived. That's what matters." The remaining pursuers, stunned by the display, fled. Cole had given everything: his life, his freedom, his reputation for her survival. The hunter who had arrived as her enemy had become her protector, sacrificing everything for someone he once sought to capture. Amelia felt the full weight of his act, tears streaming as she cradled him. In the days that followed, Amelia reflected on Cole's sacrifice. His life had been one of contracts and fear, yet in the end, he had chosen selflessness and loyalty over profit. He had shown her courage, strategy, and compassion in equal measure. His legacy was now hers to honor, not through revenge, but through living fully, wisely, and bravely. Standing atop a hill overlooking the valley, Amelia felt both grief and strength. Cole's presence remained with her in memory, in lessons learned, and in the trust they had built. She understood that her survival was inseparable from his sacrifice, and that moving forward meant carrying both his courage and his memory into the future. As the sun rose over Red Willow, painting the land with golden light, Amelia took a deep breath. The danger had passed, but life awaited. She would honor Cole's sacrifice by living boldly, carrying the bond they shared into every decision, every step. The hunter had died, but the man he became, her protector, her guardian, her unexpected ally, would live on through her.